Hello,
Hello,
Peter.
Tisha.
How are you today?
I can't complain, and yourself?
I'm fine. I've moved into a new house, so I feel as if I've walked into a Jane Austen movie. It's this old house in Worcester, and it has these stately fireplaces, and I I feel well. We moved last weekend, so I'm in a much better space than I was last weekend.
Hmm.
But Peter, before we start, I briefly met you online on a previous occasion. But I would just like to get to know you a little bit better and to introduce you to any possible audience members. Good day, Gregory Nitsky. So, Peter, just in a nutshell, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, if well, as much as you can reveal. I hope you're not with MI5 or something like that.
I'm not allowed to tell you if I'm with MI5 or not, but yeah, Peter, Cape Town. In my 40s now. I have never been religious, atheist. Yeah, Dean contacted me a while ago and said he'd maybe I could help host with you and Bolelong and himself. And here I find myself. I'm not well educated in sort of theology or philosophy or anything like that. I see things as very black and white.
So thank you, Bolelang, for the compliment. I feel like a queen with the chandeliers, but I'm wearing my old house coat because it's freezing in Worcester. I think there's snow. If I could see the mountain, I bet you there'd be a layer of snow on it. So thank you, Bolelang. Peter, you said that you're not educated in philosophy and that theology and that type of thing. Now, that's actually, to me, it's that counts in your favor, because that means that you're not versed in apologetics, and it means that you have all your logical thinking faculties still fairly unaddled in place. So I'm also not learned in philosophy, although I have been spending the last couple of years on the internet and listening to philosophers, and I enjoy philosophy. And I do have a degree in English literature, so I suppose it touches with philosophy. But most of what I know about theology and philosophy and that type of thing is from watching programs like the Atheist Experience. I'm a fan of Matt Delahanty's atheist debate reviews, where he reviews debates. And I'm a keen listener to a religiously sponsored program from the UK with Justin Brierley, Unbelievable. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I'm not familiar with it, no.
Well, if you want to get a very nice, informative, easily accessible touch-up on philosophy and theology, I'll send you a few links to some of the episodes where he's spoken to people like Peter Singer, Richard Dawkins, but also what they do, they have debates or discussions, not debates, between religious and non-religious people, and between religious people of different stripes. And those are the most violent conversations, where you have a Baptist and a Roman Catholic. It always ends in or a young earth creationist versus an old earth creationist. I mean, it's just hilarious. So today our topic is the divine hiddenness. That's what it's actually called. And it's always interesting for me as a former believer. So I spent the first 40 years of my life in the Gereformeerde Kerk. I don't know if you're familiar. It's the same church that Evie de Klerk belonged to. It's the Afrikaans version of the most. So there's three Afrikaans churches: the NG, the Hervormde, and then the Gereformeerde. And the Gereformeerde is the most conservative of the three. So the first 40 years of my life, I spent in a heavily indoctrinated, fundamentalist church. And that means that my deconversion and the way I see things now is probably very different from the way you see it as somebody who has never been religious. And that means that your experience of the divine hiddenness of God and my experience of the divine hiddenness is somewhat different, because to you, God has always been hidden. And to me, he sort of disappeared. And I played the game very keenly for a number of years. So let's hear what's your opinion on why do you think God has never appeared to you, Peter, to tell you that you have to believe in him?
Oh, I think there's two answers to that. One is very simple. There are no gods. The second one, and I think what the believers would tell me, is that I haven't looked hard enough. I haven't searched, well, I don't know what the right wording would be. I haven't searched in my soul. I haven't looked for him or it or them. Yeah, for me, it is quite simple, is that I have never seen any evidence for them. Faith is a requirement, and it just doesn't make sense. Where I do feel I might be let down is you or the believers may know scripture, and they might be able to quote Bible verses, which I'm unfamiliar with. But normally I would respond to something like that by saying, I don't lack belief in books. We'll have to do a little bit better than quoting from a book. It's a massive claim with very little evidence.
Yes, ironically, the book comes into my deconversion very strongly because, I mean, as I said, I believed in the existence of God, but I began to question the way that he was communicating to us. And when I started to a pastor or a minister in my search for Jesus, because I wanted to find Jesus, I was a little bit disillusioned with the Christians that I experienced at that stage in my life, and I decided that after much prayer and much serious contemplation, and I used to write God letters. I still actually have many of those because I was a diarist most of my life. I started when I was 14 and I just kept at it. And many of my diary entries are actually prayers. So I have evidence of my search for God. And I started to read the Bible, and I can't see that the Bible can be presented as evidence for God. I mean, even as a Christian, I can't see that to a non-believer the Bible should be evidence for God. I want to ask you something about this seeking, because what I'd like to know, let me pretend for a moment. Let me put on my my Christian cap. There we go. There's my Christian cap. So let me pretend that I'm a Christian. What have you done actively what do you think you've done actively to seek God?
We're going to take it one step backwards from there, because I don't know what God is, or what they are. To my knowledge, nobody does. I don't know what this thing is that I would be asked to look for. I can only imagine it's inside me. It's in my mind. I would be told that I must look in my heart, but I don't think hearts work that way. I think they're pumps. So yeah, I have stumbled at the very first block because I wouldn't have a clue what to look for.
What to look for.
What it is. Yeah.
That's a very, very good point. I want to ask you something else. And sorry, Peter, I'm questioning you as if you're not the co-host. So please feel free to jump in and question me. But maybe some of our audience members will follow easier if I sort of do this the Socratic way. And you are my my co-victim. I don't know what should we call it, but
test subject.
Are you familiar with Alex O'Connor? He has a podcast, The Cosmic Skeptic.
No, I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, so he's a young atheist activist. I think he's 22 or something like that. He's really young. He could have been my son, in fact. And he just finished a degree in theology. He's a committed atheist, but he has redefined this idea of the hiddenness of God as the best defeater for the existence of God. But he's redefined it or he's one of the good communicators about it. So there's a criteria that he calls the non-resistant unbeliever. Because Christians will also often say that you don't find God because you don't want to find him. You're resistant. So the philosophical hypothesis is that if there's only one non-resistant non-believer who's looking for God, even without even knowing what he's looking for, he's just open to whatever experience God expects of him, and God still remains hidden, then that says quite a lot. So would you see yourself as a resistant or a non-resistant unbeliever?
I would have to say resistant. I think
Okay.
I'm quite opposed to the things that religions or religious people will stand for and do. So I don't think I'm actively trying to find anything special or divine.
But if there were to be sufficient evidence, and I want to give another disclaimer here, I see myself as a non-resistant unbeliever at this stage, because believing in something and worshipping some said thing is, in my opinion, not the same. I mean, I believe that Putin and Donald Trump exist. I absolutely believe that they exist because there's enough evidence. But that does not mean that I revere them or that I think that they should be revered. In fact, I think just the opposite. So to me, there's a difference between accepting the existence of a person or thing and worshipping said person or thing. So I'm sure that if you had sufficient evidence, like we have for somebody like Putin, you'd say, yes, he's there and he's a total fool and I don't want anything to do with him. Which
It's interesting.
makes you that makes you in my opinion, that makes you a non-resistant non-believer, because there's this distinction between believing and worshipping.
Yeah, it's sort of an extra step, isn't it? If there was any evidence to show the existence of these things, I think that still needs to justify being worshipped.
That's exactly my point as well. And I've often said, if God were to appear to me and come out of the corner where he's hiding, or the closet or the cupboard, I would, in fact, it would lead to, well, depending on how patient God was with a sinner like myself, how quickly he struck me dead, it would be a very interesting and very long conversation. And my mom has said she hopes, for God's sake, that he remains missing, because she knows what I can be like when I have a mind to start questioning you. So this idea, it's important for me to establish the concept of, number one, believing in the existence of something, an entity, does not require that one worships or reveres it. And secondly, if there's only one non-resistant unbeliever, why does God not appear at least to that person? And in my opinion, the two strongest philosophical arguments against the existence of God is the problem of evil, which I know some philosophers say it's not that strong, they can work around it. But I've heard many philosophers say that the problem of the hiddenness of God is almost a foolproof defeater for God's existence. And I just so hope that we could have somebody call in, somebody who believes in God, to tell us why he remains hidden and where, and why does he hide inside of us? Why do I have to go into some sort of a trance to find him? Why do I have to listen to music played in a certain key and go with people who think the way I do and raise up my hands and sway? And why not something like Paul experienced, when he saw blinding light, and and I find it really curious. And even as a believer, I found, let me just read this one. Don't take it away. David Johanan Viljoen. I'd accept evidence for God. It would be very difficult and painful because I've based my worldview on the idea that God doesn't exist. It would take a lot more than evidence to start worshiping God if she exists. I absolutely agree with that. I don't think I will worship because I think God will have to really prove that he's not like the character in his book before I would worship him in any way. So thank you for that comment, Mr. Viljoen. I just remember the surname and the middle name, Johanan Viljoen. And anybody watching out there, if you have an uncle or an aunt who you know is a devout Christian, invite them to call us. I'm not mean. Peter's not mean, and we just ask questions, and these are important conversations to be had. So dogs right now because they've seen the cat through the window all day long, and now suddenly they are barking at the dog. So maybe God is trying to tell me something, moving in mysterious ways, as he obviously does, you know.
It wouldn't be the first time on our show that he's intervened with using other methods, would it? Tertia, may I ask, if we go back to your point about whether we accept or believe that this God exists and whether we worship this God, what is the point of worship? What does it achieve? Is it to seek favor, eternal paradise? Why would you?
Well, Dean, can you just bring the comment from somebody dragon back up, because what Peter is now asking leads exactly to that. The dragon of there you go. How do you say that? Echigo. Echigo. I doubt any being that is perfect would want worship at all. And that is something that I really think needs to be addressed more often by Christians. So please, guys, anybody watching, anybody listening, get your uncle, get your aunt. It's a cold Sunday. They won't be going to church tonight. Most churches don't have Sunday night services anymore. I'm sure they are bored. Get them to engage with us. Send them a link and tell them that you know these very nice people on the internet who can have a very good conversation with them. But I want to get back to that. And it's interesting that my husband, when we were still churchgoers, we once had this conversation. So I don't know how familiar you are with the process of deconversion, but it happens differently for different people. And my husband and I sort of had parallel deconversion experiences. And he's not a man of many words. He thinks things through and then makes up his mind, and then he says what he thinks. Whereas I talk through the whole process. And he one day said to me, he wonders why God is like a Middle Eastern potentate who craves to be praised and worshipped at all times. And it was so funny because it was the first time that I actually thought about that. And do you have kids, Peter?
I do, yeah. I have a young boy.
A young boy.
One boy, he'll be 11 in a few days' time.
Okay, so 11 years it's getting challenging. They start to challenge you. Now, as a father, and I have 3, and they're now in the 2 elder ones in their 20s. But I started to think about this image presented to us as God as a parent, a loving parent, and I thought, you know, neither of my parents nor my in-laws have ever required me to worship them in any way. In fact, they encouraged me to speak my mind, and I disagreed with them frequently on many things. And when I was raising my kids, worship was the last thing I don't want them to worship me. In fact, I will even accept that they don't even have to love me. If they do, it's a bonus. But it doesn't work like that. And here you have this perfect being, the champion of hide and seek as well, world champion of hide and seek. And Gregory Nitsky, let me read that. Run-of-the-mill believers will not confront the hide and seek champ. Yes, apologists will avoid and deflect. And I really wish that we could get an apologist to phone in, because I would love to have an honest conversation. And about these two things, because it all becomes very integrated. If you want to be worshipped, bloody hell, get a few parades going. Get yourself on an armored vehicle and parade through the streets with a hat and what's it, Idi Amin? Get yourself in a position where you make your power known. Why stay hidden? So there's this great paradox.
That's the difficult questions.
Well, if you want to be worshipped, sorry, Peter, go ahead.
Well, it ties in nicely with that comment there. I mean, tell us that you're going to cure cancer in babies and children, and do it, and poof, everybody's happy. Man, that's worthy of worship. If you could do that in the blink of an eye. And I guess that ties back to the problem of evil, or the existence of evil, which, as you said, may or may not be a very good argument, but unfortunately, bad things do exist. And surely an all-knowing, all-loving entity could end that if it wanted to.
Especially,
but it's too busy hiding.
Especially what is called in philosophical. Now the word has slipped my mind. But if you think about bad things that are things like tsunamis or earthquakes, the argument is often given that bad things have to happen to us so that we grow, and I sort of, yes, we don't grow unless we are challenged. There's value in that argument to a very limited extent, but gratuitous, that's it, gratuitous evil. So, for example, I saw a cat at the mall 2 days ago, obviously a stray cat with its back leg badly broken. And there's this animal hopping along on 3 legs. It's going to probably die a very long and very painful death. And if it survives, its life is going to be absolute misery. Why? Why? Or does only the misery? And I mean, as I speak, as I'm sitting here in front of my heater, there are people who huddle in a street somewhere around a corner to keep warm tonight. How does that improve the life of anybody? So the idea of gratuitous evil, to me, is a defeater for any objections against the problem of evil. And the funny thing, Peter, I want to ask you about this, or your opinion. I have found that the more people suffer, the more they hold on to this God that they can't see, that they have no way of interacting with. And I think that is why somebody like Karl Marx said that religion is the opium of the masses. Have you experienced that firsthand ever before?
Nothing springs to mind, but I think I can understand the mindset behind it. I'm sure it's true for many people of faith. And I think it probably has a lot to do with placebo. If something bad happens to you and you accept it and you think, I'm being tested, my faith is being tested, this is going to help me grow, then fair play. If it's helping you and it gets you through a tough situation, so be it. But at the end of the day, it might well just be placebo, and it is still in your mind. You are helping yourself. You are one way or another giving yourself the psychological ability to overcome what's happened to you. I don't think divine intervention is required for that at all.
Peter, while you were speaking, I just had a flash of inspiration. Maybe that's God speaking to me, because as you were speaking, and I was thinking about the hiddenness of God, maybe God's master stroke is staying hidden. Because the fact that he remains hidden means that anybody can attach any value to him and can describe him in any way that suits them. And he never has to be accountable to anything or anybody, because he can just say, well, this is how I appear to this person. So maybe that is God's master stroke. Because I mean, if I stay hidden and people have ideas about who I am, the idea is always greater than the real thing, especially if you've never appeared. I mean, can you imagine like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, and he has this voice modulator, and then this puny little man comes out. Can you imagine? And God says, okay, here I am. Hello, guys. So,
yeah, I mean, that's one of the beauties of having all these gods being hidden from us, is that we can give them any attributes and strengths and anything we want them to have, because unfortunately, to date, they're not stepping in and arguing against anything we want to attribute to them.
So you see, that is the Christian God's master stroke. Because all the other gods who appeared to people in physical form, the Norse gods, Thor, Zeus, all of those guys, they've all disappeared because they dared to show themselves. And that's why they disappeared. But the Christian God and Allah, the Muslim God, they remain hidden. So God's existence depends on his being hidden. How's that for a paradox?
Yeah, it's a requirement to be God, is to not be seen by anyone ever.
Yep.
There you go.
Peter, you said that your son is 11. Is he religious in any way? How do you approach? I'm sure he gets exposed to religion at school and in society. And how do you cope with it? And I'll tell you why I'm asking this, because I have a story about God's hiddenness and an 11-year-old.
Okay, so it has come up once or twice. He's come home and said, oh, but my friend says that God is great and he's the greatest thing ever. Okay, and I don't think he's old enough to understand the arguments and the reasoning and the logic behind that. But what I do is try to talk very openly about religion and the shortcomings as I see them in religion. So my wife and I will talk about it whenever we want, whenever we feel like. And if he's around, he's welcome to join in. He can listen in, he can ask. I don't hide the atheism in this household at all, and in my family in general. So, I don't want to talk to him about it too much right now. I think maybe he could follow the same path that I did and just wake up one day and go, this God thing doesn't sound right. I don't think I'm going to believe in it. And that's a conclusion that he will get to, hopefully, maybe, because of the lack of evidence. There will be nothing to convince him, is what I'm hoping. What is your story?
I'll tell you now. I just want to read David Fallun's comment, because it's a very sensible comment. What's the difference between an invisible hidden God and no God at all? What's the difference between an invisible, incorporeal, undetectable dragon and no dragon at all? I'm referring to Carl Sagan's Demon Haunted World. I use that example so often about this dragon. And it's that story. I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with that section in Carl Sagan's book. But so, and that's exactly what Christian apologists do. So I have this invisible. Are you familiar with the dragon, the invisible dragon?
The dragon in Carl Sagan's garage, yes.
Yes. And then he says, okay, but pour flour and it will make footprints in the flour. I said, no. This dragon of mine hovers just above the ground, and okay, but heat detectors. No. He breaks heat detectors, or that's not how. But there's always an answer. It's a little bit like a 4-year-old. But my story about the hiddenness of God. So, in my entire family, my husband's family, all our extended family, we were very religious. So it was quite a thing when we deconverted, and we didn't proclaim it openly. Well, I tried not to, but we just sort of stopped going to church, and everybody frowned about it. And my daughter found it very disturbing to have a mom and dad who didn't fit in with the rest of the crowd. And it caused quite a lot of conflict between the two of us, because she would say to me, why don't you take us to Sunday school? And then the one day that I did say, right, let's go to Sunday school, they said, do we have to get up at 8? I said, yeah, that's what you have to do if you want to go to Sunday school. Said, no, thank you, we're not going to Sunday school. But nevertheless, we often had very heated, unpleasant arguments, my daughter and I, about the fact that I'm not religious. And she often asked me to pretend to be religious just so that it would be easier for her to fit into the school and the society that we operate in, which I could not do. But one day, after one of these heated arguments, my 2 older children differ only by 15 months. And it was really unpleasant. And my son was in the car with us. We were waiting at school for something. And later that day, he had rugby practice, and I walked him to the sports ground. And I sort of just wanted to probe how this affects him and how he feels about it, because it was having an impact on family relationships. And I said to him, so, son, how do you feel about these arguments that your sister and I are having about religion? And he sort of looked at me and he said, Mom, so in Afrikaans, obviously, he said, if there is a God and he wants us to worship him, why doesn't he just come to earth and say, hello, I'm God, here I am, worship me? And at that time, I was a newly deconverted atheist. So I didn't know the term, the hiddenness of God. But if an 11-year-old can figure it out so easily, without any trouble, and say, if there's a God and he wants us to worship him, just say, here I am, worship me. And to me, that was, how do you defeat that kind of clear logic, especially in view of the fact that the Bible explicitly teaches that we have to believe like little children. And Jesus said, bring the children to me and let them sit on my lap. And here's my 11-year-old son telling me, if there is a God and he wants us to worship him, just show up and say, here I am.
Beautiful. I think your problem was that you didn't get into church at a young enough age. That's probably why. So well done for that.
Well, actually, they did go to church. They went to church, yes, until they were about 8, 9, because the first 10 years of the first years of our marriage, we were very religious. We went to church, in fact, multiple times a week for almost everything. So they were all baptized. They grew up in church, and they were in a school where religion, not a religious school, but as in most South African government schools, religion is pressed upon everybody. There you see, Psalm 8, verse 2, out of the mouth of babes and sucklings hast thou ordained strength because of thine enemies, that thou mightest still the enemy and the avenger. So I wonder who's the enemy and the avenger. Maybe it's the hidden God. I don't know. So
he's both, I think.
Fortunately, my son, Bolelang says, my son found it confusing which fellowship to go to at school between the Muslims and Christians. He would choose the One with more goodies for the day. Clever boy. Clever boy. I like that. Unfortunately, there weren't
Again,
enough
from the
wisdom.
mouth of babes.
Again, from the mouth of babes. Yep, that's how it works. So Peter, if we talk about the hidden God, I know Matt Delahanty always says he doesn't know how to answer this question. What kind of an appearance would God have to make to convince you of his existence?
This I have given some thought, and the best representation of something like this I've seen is in a cartoon series called Rick and Morty. Some of the younger viewers may be familiar with it, where an alien.
My son's favorite. It's my son's favorite.
Okay. In one of the episodes, I think it was an alien. It was just a giant head, 200 meters tall, appeared above a mountain and spoke to everyone at once. And I think maybe that's something that I would be interested to see. That would certainly pique my interest. Imagine if this thing could appear to everyone at the same time, speak to them in their own languages, that there was no doubt everybody saw it. This is not the delusion of a few people. This is everyone. But yeah, I have to go to a cartoon program to get any kind of idea on something like that. That would probably have a disastrous effect on world peace, though.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know. So I've also given it thought, and I don't know, have you ever had any kind of either being sober or high or drunk, have you ever had any sort of hallucinatory experience that you can recall at this moment in time? Or you'll see where I'm going with this.
No, I have not.
Well, nor have I, except that I know that a very high percentage, I'm thumb sucking, but something like 70 or 80% of people have auditory illusions. It's very common. So that's when you know that you're alone in a room and you hear somebody call your name. Often, in my case, it's a child or a husband, and I'll hear "mommy," and I've read up on it. It doesn't happen often, but it's a very common occurrence to have these auditory hallucinations. They're called auditory hallucinations, and I was very shortly after my deconversion. I think I was still in the process. Thank you. Try shrooms or LSD. You meet many, many gods.
Dean speaks from experience, I bet.
It sounds like that. I'm a bit nervous. I've tried edibles once or twice before, and I don't like that feeling of being out of, I don't know, I just don't like it. So maybe that's why God doesn't appear to me, because he knows I won't like having funny experiences. But nevertheless, in the process of my deconversion, I woke up one night to go to the bathroom, and I never switch on the light. And I went and did what I needed to do. And as I walked back to bed, I could swear I hear somebody say my voice. And if this is not proof that I am a non-resistant unbeliever, then I don't know what is. And I actually went and I sat at the edge of my bed. So I know that I was awake. Because I sat up, I didn't get back into bed. And I sat and I said, I actually said out loud, God, if this was you speaking to me, I'm here. If I hear my name being called again, or if I hear some, I don't know, Gaan Yin in whatever, I'll have to consider the possibility, at least, that there's something odd going on, either in my brain or in reality. And I sat on my bed for a good few minutes until it got really cold and I got back into bed. And I remember I was awake for quite a bit, and I repeated the request, please, do I need to hear something? Is there something I need to know? And it was, all I heard were the trucks on the highway and my husband snoring gently next to me and the creaking of the house. So to me, one auditive hallucination is not enough evidence. I need more than that. And I mean, there's many instances in the Bible. God spoke to Samuel like that. And people have claimed that God spoke to them in dreams. I was awake, which is better than a dream. So why is there just nothing? Because, as I said, if that's not proof that I'm not resistant to the idea, at least, of God, it's not. If God exists, then he exists. Many things that I don't like exist. So whether I like it or not is not dependent. So even that's something that perhaps some of our viewers, when they get into an argument or a conversation with Christians about this, whether you like something or dislike it, if that thing exists, your liking or not liking it has no bearing on its existence. Because you can't, I've heard Christians say, yes, but you don't want God to exist, and that's why he won't appear to you. But I mean, that's just absurd. So if I want him to exist, then he will appear. So isn't that a bit spiteful?
Well, I think that ties into it being in your head or in the perceiver's head. That's where you're going to find this God, especially if you've been preconditioned to expect or want to undergo an experience like that, which also goes back to the LSD or mushroom things. There are drugs that can make you meet the gods. Specifically, I know there's Mother Earth is very often met when people take ayahuasca. And the reason is because they've been told to expect to perhaps meet Mother Earth when they do. A very similar thing happens to people who are abducted by aliens. They're abducted by 4-foot-tall little gray men with oval heads. Not because those aliens exist, but that's because that's what they expect to happen to them if they meet the aliens. It's all up here.
It's interesting what you say about the aliens. Those types of visions, experiences only started to happen after the 1940s, 1950s sci-fi movies in which the aliens had a very typical appearance, which is very funny. I see priming people for religious experience is absolutely, it's a very real thing. And it's very easy to do that. I mean, if you look at social psychology experiments, prime people for anything is very easy. I want to talk about maybe for a little bit something that we haven't touched upon that might be used as a defeater for the hiddenness of God, and that is near-death experiences. How familiar are you with that, Peter? That phenomenon? I don't know if it is.
I've seen it crop up from time to time. I've read some things about it. I always, being a very literal person and maybe not the smartest tool in the shed, I get stuck on the first word, near. And that's where they fall down for me, because it's a near-death experience. And things happen in your head, neurons are firing off, there's panic in your brain cells. But that's, I don't know a heck of a lot about it, because I probably mentally block it off because of that very first word.
Yes, and even if I could accept that let's for a moment grant that God appears to people as they are dying. and then he changes his mind and brings them back to life. Let's grant that. Sorry, I'm just getting an interruption.
No
and
problem.
It's getting darker and darker, and we have load shedding. And so if I start to grow faint, it's not because my light is fading. It's just because the sun is setting, whatever sun there is behind these thick clouds. But it's funny that why would God then appear to people only as they die? That's also when a Hindu encounters Jesus in an NDE, I will give it some thought. Yeah, but even then, I mean, surely that means that how you live your life and whether you believe in God while you're living doesn't really matter, because he only sees it fit to show himself to your dying brain. Oh, remember that God hides from the wise and intelligent. So Peter, there you go. You are wise and intelligent.
That's the first time anyone's ever accused me of that.
Well, the fact that God hides from you, it says in Matthew 11, verse 25, God hides from the wise and intelligent. So you have to be wise and intelligent. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
So, Peter, have you had fun?
Yes, brilliant talking with you. Brilliant.
So will you go ahead?
No, after you.
No, I was going to ask you whether you have a list of relatives that you can phone and invite to talk to us.
I do. I actually do. I know there's one or two people watching this right now who will know who I'm talking about. I have some very religious family members, very religious, but I don't think they would have the guts to do this. I think sometimes people do find it hard to defend their faith in an eloquent manner, to put forth arguments that make some kind of sense, because they only are what they are because their parents were and their neighbors and their community were. I haven't given it enough thought yet. But I will certainly want to put my feelers out there and see if any of the extended family would ever like to come have a chat with us.
I see that David Johanan Falloon made another comment there about near-death experiences, and I agree. And there's been a lot of research about it, actually acceptable academic research, and it just doesn't make the cut. But I want to extend a very warm invitation to anybody, any Christian out there. You don't have to be eloquent. I mean, what is eloquence? I don't think I'm particularly eloquent. I often roll my eyes and look away from the camera and think and interrupt myself. So you absolutely don't have to be any more eloquent than I am. And I don't think that I'm a particularly eloquent person. Maybe I should just say something about the reason why we have this program. Oh, yes, and we do have an Afrikaans one as well. So if you're not comfortable speaking in English, please, you're welcome. I'm fully bilingual. I just don't speak Sesotho and isiXhosa, which I wish I could. But we want to foster understanding. And we want to create a world where all ideas are open to criticism. Because only in such a world can we prevent echo chambers and intolerance. We have to, in my opinion, as a teacher, as a parent, as a member of society, we have to encourage open, civil disagreement with one another and the challenging of ideas, because ideas need to be challenged. If we don't challenge ideas, we will end up destroying ourselves. So that's the motivation behind this program. That's why we want to invite religious people, so that we will not, it's not about deconverting anybody, because I'm not of the opinion that it's possible for me or for Peter or for any person to deconvert another person. Each individual looks at the evidence, and it's a very individual experience that one person can maybe be a catalyst in the experience of another person. But I can't change anybody's mind. I wish I could. It would be nice, but I don't have. I have about as much power as God, you know. So I can't. And that's why we want to invite people, because secondly, conversations with people who differ from one another are always more fun. I mean, Peter and I are just agreeing. It's boring. It's not a challenge. I don't have to extend my mind. Body Lang says we're human and other humans will definitely enjoy us. Yes, and the idea is never, oh, I'd love to see Royus Strauss on, but he may preach. Yes, I think Royus would just drive the devil out of us. Yeah, so that could be fun too. I mean, you never know. Different type of show. Give him 5 minutes and see how many devils he can string out of us. But yes, anybody listening, we really want to foster civil conversation. Never disillusion people or be rude or dismissive. It's about having conversations, because I want to live in a world where I can openly say that I'm an atheist and people won't raise their eyebrows and not offer me a job or not send their child to my school because I'm an atheist. That's the main purpose here, to make the world a better place, because the world living is difficult. It's hard. It's hard to be alive. And if we can have fewer struggles, that would be nice. So what do you say to that, Peter?
I agree. It would be great to talk it out, great to share some information. It'd be great for anyone to join us and say, listen, you were talking about something there just now regarding the Bible, and you're quite wrong, and this is why. It'd be nice to get some views like that.
Something I can just share in closing, a little anecdote. So one of my paternal uncles came to visit us earlier this year. Now, get Bougaard to call.
Who's he?
I don't know if it's maybe some pastor, or I don't know. Maybe we can be informed. Get him to call. So this uncle of mine has found it very difficult to accept that both my aged parents and our entire family have deconverted. We don't go to church. We don't pray before meals anymore. And it's been difficult and hard on the family, because my dad wanted to be a minister. He always acted like the stand-in minister at family gatherings. And it's caused many uncomfortable situations, because now we're sitting at the table getting ready to eat and nobody knows how to handle this because we don't pray anymore. But it's this elephant in the room. And when they were here in February, my uncle made a comment, something to the effect of the reason his business was successful is only because God blessed him. Now, I mean, they know that we're not religious. And I just decided I'm not going to keep quiet anymore. I'm not going to pretend that those things aren't being said. I'm going to talk to him about it. And we ended up having about a 2-hour-long conversation with vehement disagreement. But what I found was that the connection between us deepened, because J.E. is Stephen Anderson's Man in South Africa Under Sanction from HRC CRL. That looks HRC, is it the Hills HRC CRL? I'm not sure who that is. Get us the details. Mm-hmm. Gregory, send us the details. I will definitely follow up on that. But what I was saying is that the relationship between us had a new depth and understanding, and there's a new empathy between both of us, and that elephant in the room was suddenly gone. There was an openness. We still disagree vehemently, and they still find it hard to accept that we're no longer religious, but the relationship is better now than it was before we had the conversation. And I'm talking about an 80-year-old very stoere Afrikaanse oomie who feels very strongly about his beliefs. So if the two of us could have a civil conversation and end up having mutual understanding afterwards, then I'm sure I can do it with anybody. And I'm sure, Peter, you look like a nice enough person. I'm sure you'd be able to do that too. And if you get too rough and tough, I'll just rein you in. I'll just say, no, be nice, you know. So yes, please, we'd love to have a conversation. Who's going to be the first David to take on the Goliath of the internet infidels, the atheists in the Western Cape? Let's see. Shall we pray for God to speak and inspire some Christian out there to call us and maybe connect with us?
Wouldn't know how.
Oh, it's easy. You just say, hello, anybody out there? Please send us a Christian to talk to us. Easy. You just speak to yourself. Okay, he is. That is the commission. Oh, commission for phobia. Fantastic. We'll get the details and maybe we should send an invitation or two. Now, we've got 3 minutes left, but I can see that I'm disappearing. I'm fading away in the darkness. So I'm going to say thank you, Dean. Thank you to the listeners, the viewers out there. Get your relatives to phone the uncle, the aunt, the youth pastor, the drummer in the church band. We can't wait. We can't wait. Peter, it was lovely to host with you. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Thank you too, Tertia. Appreciate that.
Thank you.